So I wanted to read a little bit out of a new book I got called Your Psilocybin Mushroom Companion. And this is from chapter 4, How Psilocybin Works. Everything about psilocybin is mysterious, especially how it works. How does it create that mystical, trippy feeling? How does it change people? How does it work in the brain? And how are their reactions connected? These are complicated questions with many answers, and all of them are just theories at the moment. In this chapter, we'll explore the different subjective experiences psilocybin can produce and how they motivate people towards personal growth. We'll also explore the current theories on what's happening in the brain and why that might possibly create both the acute trip and the lasting change that it does. We'll also touch on mystical experiences, the most inevitable and arguably most valuable of the possible trip outcomes. First of all, it's important to recognize that we don't know exactly what's happening when people take psilocybin. The psychedelic renaissance has also come interest in trying to answer some of the big questions, not only how psychedelics work, but how consciousness works at all. While there are finally scientific studies looking at the brain scans of people while they're tripping on psychedelics to try and create a better understanding of how they function, the individual's subjective experience still seems to hold the most weight for personal growth. That's because these experiences are often filled with insight, lessons, and new perspectives. When I asked Peter Hendricks about why something as unscientific as a mystical experience seems to help people the most, he compares psychedelic experiences to antidepressants. If you give someone an SSRI, they may not notice much of anything, Hendricks said. Very subtly, over a period of time, they say, "Oh yeah, I guess I do feel better." And we can say, "Oh yeah, that's because we've tinkered with your serotonin levels in your brain." But from people who had experience with psychedelics, they say, "My God, that was profound and salient. And I can tell you why I think I've changed from my perspective. It's because I have this experience. It was the most memorable and meaningful and motivated me to change my behavior or allowed me to see things from a new perspective that has since had very beneficial impacts on my life." Put another way, in the words of Ross Watts from a study she sent me, during psilocybin, people often access new perspectives and revelations that help them turn insights into understandings into actions. These insights and revelations can come for people at different doses and intensities of experiences, but one of the most interesting aspects of psychedelic research is that participants in clinical trials seem to benefit the most from psychedelic therapy when they have a full-on mystical, spiritual, or peak experience during those dosing sessions. When I speak with Richard about this phenomenon, he first points out that other types of psychedelic experiences are still valuable and therapeutic, especially at low and medium doses. People have what Richard calls a psychodynamic or psychological experience where they deal with things like grief, guilt, anger, interpersonal relationships, and conflicts, as well as experiences of age regression and confrontations of life trauma that can all be incredibly healing and helpful. This is also what is referred to as things bubbling up during a psychedelic experience that needs to be dealt with. While on higher doses, people can experience transcending these old wounds. That's not always the case, especially at low and medium doses. However, you don't need to transcend these feelings for them to be beneficial. Sometimes it's enough just to recognize from a new perspective that these are things in your life that are bothering you, and you can take that knowledge back with you to work on. But at higher doses, and when people feel comfortable and trusting enough in their set and setting to completely let go and embrace the experience, that's when another type of healing can occur that's often described as a mystical or peak experience. But what is a mystical experience? Richards has defined mystical consciousness in his book Sacred Knowledge, and in his many talks of the subject. But basically, it has 6 qualities. Unity, the sense of oneness with all things. Transcendence of time and space, as if these earthly concepts are irrelevant. Intuitive knowledge, a sense of being privy to the secrets of the universe that you've known all along. sacredness, a profound sense of homecoming, and a natural connection to the divine. Deeply felt positive mood, euphoria, doesn't even begin to describe it. Ineffability, impossible to put the experience into words, often because it's so paradoxical. Richards has also distinguished between two types of mystical experiences, and this is where the notion of ego dissolution comes into play. Basically, there are two levels of these psychedelic-fueled spiritual experiences. One where you're still you, or your ego is still intact, and then the higher level where you lose yourself completely and often content and I don't know that word. While both experiences are usually accompanied by a feeling of deconnection to all things, during the ego loss peak experience, people report losing the sense of I and becoming one with humanity, nature, and the entire universe, God, love, and nothingness. But what's most curious in clinical trials with psilocybin is that the participants who have the most mystical experiences, as defined by the Mystical Experience Questionnaire, a peer-reviewed psychological scale, has seemed to benefit the most from psychedelic therapy, no matter if the study is for addiction or end-of-life anxiety. But why? Clearly, it's more than just momentarily feeling good, not just getting high, Richard tells me over Skype. He explains that the memory of these transcendental experiences can change people by changing their concept of self. After that experience, you know that you are more than this being that walks through the world paying bills and eating 3 meals a day. That there really is a mystery within us, Richard says. You can label it different ways, but there is a sense of connection, that there is something deep within us that is incredibly beautiful, trustworthy, and more real or fundamental than this state of consciousness. He outlined this idea in his presentation in 2017, that the memory of the mystical experience is helpful for the following reasons: changing concept, enhanced self-worth, fresh awareness of inner resources, sense of personal empowerment, and enhanced perception. Watt also describes this shift in self-consciousness concept. Participants in his trial described being able to bypass their ordinary conceptualized self with its daily concerns and contact other, newer perspectives, including an observed self, teacher self, wise self, and loving, compassionate self. This expanded sense of self brought a new sense of confidence, assurance, and a sense of being looked after, loved, and feeling more consistently supported. Richard tells me a similar idea. One of the insights, besides, if you will, the reality of the secret, is there is beauty and worth within you. So it makes it very hard to maintain low self-worth or to pretend that you're not valued and that you're not important. So that's a little bit out of that chapter. So I'll kind